To seek their applause is to surrender your scepter to the mob. Let us begin in the grand coliseum of the soul, where every man, whether he admits it or not, once sought the roar of the crowd, the thumbs up of the masses, the fleeting validation of being seen, approved of, liked. The modern world, with its infinite digital amphitheaters, has amplified this primal craving to a fever pitch. We scroll, we post, we perform our carefully curated lives for an audience of phantoms, addicted to the little dopamine hits of digital approval. And in this desperate pursuit of external validation, we become exquisitely predictable, easily manipulated, and utterly powerless. Machiavelli, that shrewd observer of the human circus, would have watched this spectacle with a mixture of fascination and contempt. He understood that public opinion was a fickle beast, a roaring tide that could lift you one day and drown you the next. To build your foundation on such shifting sands was the height of folly. A prince, he wrote, ought not to mind the reproach of cruelty, for with a very few examples he will be more merciful than those who through too much mercy allow disorders to arise. And the key here is not the cruelty itself, but the unwavering focus on his own judgment, irrespective of the crowd's fleeting emotions. Imagine a king who governs by polls. Every decision, every decree is based on the latest readings of public sentiment. He chases approval like a jester chasing coins. What happens when a difficult decision must be made? A decision that will be unpopular but ultimately necessary for the long-term survival of his kingdom? He will hesitate. He will compromise. He will water down his vision until it is palatable to the masses. And in doing so, he will render it ineffective. He has surrendered his authority to the whims of the crowd, and his kingdom will inevitably suffer. The man who seeks external validation is that king, perpetually polling his internal kingdom of insecurities. He tailors his actions, his beliefs, his very identity to win the approval of those around him, his friends, his family, his partner, the faceless horde of the internet. He becomes a chameleon, constantly changing his colors to blend in, never daring to stand out, never daring to be truly himself. He has placed the throne of his own self-worth in the hands of the mob, and he will forever be a slave to their fickle applause. There is a chilling tale whispered as in the smoky opium dens of old Saigon about a man who could perfectly mimic the voice of anyone he heard. He used this talent to become a celebrated storyteller, enthralling audiences with his vivid impersonations. But his own voice, his true voice, withered and faded from disuse. He became so obsessed with reflecting the voices of others that he lost his own. When asked who he truly was, he could only offer another imitation. He became a hollow echo, a ghost in the machine of his own making, forever seeking validation in the borrowed sounds of others because he had silenced his own. The modern addiction to validation is that man amplified a billionfold. We curate our online profiles, crafting perfect avatars that bear only a passing resemblance to our messy, flawed selves. We seek the validation of likes and comments, mistaking digital applause for genuine connection. We become performers in a never-ending play, desperately seeking the approval of an audience that is just as lost and insecure as we are. And in this relentless pursuit, our own true selves, our authentic desires, our unique perspectives, our inner voice, become faint and forgotten, drowned out by the clamor of the crowd. The faint, bitter hope in this realization lies in the courage to embrace the silence of genuine solitude, to turn away from the roaring crowds, both real and digital, and to listen to the quiet whisper of your own inner compass. To build your kingdom on the solid ground of your own values, your own judgment, your own internal validation. This is not to say you become a hermit, devoid of human connection. It is to say that your sense of self-worth must come from within, not be constantly tethered to the shifting winds of public opinion. So, I ask you, you who instinctively reach for your phone after even the smallest experience, craving that little hit of external approval, whose voice are you truly trying to hear? Is it the fleeting cheers of strangers, or the quiet, steady wisdom of your own soul? And what will become of your own kingdom if you continue to rule by the polls of popular opinion? The fool starves for validation. The prince learns to mint it as his own private currency. I'm going to tell you a secret so contrary to your noble instincts that it will feel like a violation. While the rest of the world is on its knees, begging for the scraps of validation from the table of public opinion, the Machiavellian prince is not starving. He is in the kitchen, learning the recipe. He understands the second deadly rule of power in this new needy age. Validation is not a thing to be sought, but a weapon to be wielded. In a world addicted to a drug, the man who controls the supply is the king, and the most addictive, most potent, and most widely consumed drug in the modern world is the feeling of being seen, of being approved of being told that you are good and smart and right. The average man spends his life as a desperate addict, performing pathetic tricks for his next fix. The man who would outsmart everyone understands that this universal craving is not a tragedy. It is the single greatest strategic opportunity of our time. You must become an alchemist of praise. You must learn to transmute the base metal of common flattery into the pure, irresistible gold of targeted validation. Machiavelli knew that men are fundamentally vain and self-interested creatures. He wrote, "Men are so simple and so subject to present necessities that he who seeks to deceive will always find someone who will allow himself to be deceived. To outsmart them, you do not appeal to their reason or their virtue. You appeal to their bottomless vanity. You find the deepest, most secret insecurity in their heart, the one thing they most desperately want to believe about themselves, and you tell them it is true. This is not the crude, fawning flattery of the court jester. This is the surgical, precise validation of the master interrogator. The jester tells the fat, cowardly king he is as strong as Hercules. The king is pleased, but he knows it is a lie. The master interrogator, the Machiavellian prince, tells the same king, "My lord, your true strength is not in the brute force of lesser men, but in your prudent caution, which has saved this kingdom 100 times while others counseled reckless action. You have taken his greatest weakness, his cowardice, and reframed it as a rare and noble virtue. You have not just flattered him, you have absolved him. He will now be your slave forever, because you are the keeper of the one beautiful lie he needs to believe to live with himself." There is a story from the decadent courts of the late Ottoman Empire about a silent eunuch who rose to become the secret master of the palace. He never gave an order. His only weapon was a small, polished silver mirror. He would listen to the grand viziers and the pashas as they boasted and schemed. He would listen with absolute, unnerving attention. And at the end of their speech, he would simply hold up his mirror and say, "In all of Constantinople, there is no one who sees the world as you do." That was all. But he was reflecting back to them the one thing they all craved, the image of their own unique, misunderstood genius. Drunk on this reflection, they became utterly dependent on him. He was the only mirror in the palace that showed them the face they wanted to see. He owned their souls, and he never had to raise his voice. You must become that mirror. In a world of chattering critics and indifferent crowds, you must become the one person who offers a rare and potent form of validation. You listen, you study, you find the crack in their armor, the secret fear that keeps them awake at night, and you apply the warm, healing balm of your perfectly crafted praise directly to that wound. The insecure intellectual, you praise his courageous and misunderstood ideas. The beautiful woman who is tired of being valued only for her looks. You praise her surprising and profound insight into a complex subject. You are giving the thirsty man the exact flavor of water he craves. He will drink and he will become addicted. The strange, dark hope in this cynical art is that it requires a profound and almost ascetic level of detachment. To wield this power, you must first be completely immune to the drug yourself. You cannot seek their validation while you are doling it out. This discipline, this act of becoming the dealer instead of the addict, forces you into a position of radical self-reliance. You begin to see the desperate, flailing neediness of the world with a new, cold clarity. And in that clarity, you find your own freedom. So I invite you to this dark experiment. The next time you are in a conversation, resist the urge to speak about yourself. Instead, listen. Listen with the intensity of a spy. Find the other person's deepest insecurity, and then craft one single, perfect sentence of praise that speaks directly to it. Watch their eyes, watch their posture, watch what happens when you give them the one thing they have been starving for their entire lives. And ask yourself, who in that moment truly holds the power? In a world that demands your story, the man who is a beautiful, unreadable book is king. Imagine you are a man made of smoke. You have a form, a presence, a shadow, but when someone tries to grasp you, their fingers close on empty air. They can see you, but they cannot hold you. They can hear your voice, but they cannot record your song. In a world of solid, predictable, and desperately needy people, the man made of smoke is a terrifying and irresistible enigma. This is the third deadly rule for outsmarting a world addicted to validation. You must become a virtuous deception. While everyone else is frantically bringing their whole self to work, living their truth out loud, and turning the messy contents of their inner lives into public performance art, you must do the opposite. You must cultivate an aura of profound, unshakable, and deliberate mystery. Machiavelli knew that the prince who is easily understood is a prince who is easily overthrown. A prince, he wrote with the cold precision of a diamond cutter, must be a great pretender and dissembler. He must learn to appear to be all the things the world values: merciful, faithful, humane, upright, religious, while being bound by none of them. His public face is a masterpiece of strategic art, a mask so convincing that it generates trust and admiration, all while concealing his true, flexible, and pragmatic intentions. The modern world has inverted this. It has created a cult of authenticity, which is a pretty word for predictability. You are encouraged to be an open book. But what happens to an open book? It is read, it is understood, it is summarized, and then it is placed on a shelf and forgotten. Its mystery is gone. Its power is spent. The man who is a mystery, however, the man who is a locked and unreadable codex, becomes an object of obsessive fascination. The mind of the other person becomes a laboratory dedicated to the sole purpose of deciphering you. They will spend more energy trying to guess your motives than they will spend on their own. Think of a deep, still, and unnervingly dark lake. Now think of a shallow, babbling, crystal-clear brook. The brook is charming. It is authentic. You can see every pebble, every fish. It hides nothing. You admire it for a moment and you move on. The lake, however, holds you. You cannot see the bottom. You do not know what creatures swim in its cold, black depths. Its stillness is a dare. Its silence is a challenge. You are both terrified and mesmerized by it. You do not forget the lake. Your desire, your curiosity, your respect, all of it belongs to the mystery, not to the transparency. In the intricate spycraft of the Cold War, there was a legendary Soviet mole at the heart of Western intelligence, known only by the code name Ethelred. For 30 years he operated, and no one ever discovered his identity. Why? Because he had no identity. He was a perfect functionary. He was moderately competent but not brilliant. He was pleasant but not charismatic. He had no strong opinions. His colleagues saw him as a reliable, if rather dull, piece of the bureaucratic furniture. He was so perfectly average, so utterly transparent in his simplicity, that he was completely opaque. He was hiding in plain sight. His mask was a face of utter, unmemorable normality. While his colleagues were busy preening, competing for validation and promotion, he was silently dismantling their world from the inside. You must become like Ethelred. In a world that screams for you to be passionate and vulnerable, your greatest power is to be calm, centered, and unreadably pleasant. You do not offer strong opinions unless it is strategically necessary. You do not narrate your emotional weather. You become a master of the non-committal smile, the thoughtful pause, the ambiguous answer. The strange, cold hope in this practice of dissembling is that it forces you to build a rich and truly private inner world. Because you are not constantly exporting your thoughts and feelings for public validation, you are forced to cultivate them internally. Your soul ceases to be a stage for public performance. and becomes a quiet, magnificent, and secret garden. You, and you alone, are the one who walks there. This is the beginning of true sovereignty. So I ask you this, you who are so proud of being an open book, what is written on your pages that is actually true? And what if your greatest story, the one that holds all your power, is the one that is contained in the beautiful, terrifying, and profound silence of the pages you have refused to write? The fool is a victim of his circumstances. The prince is a student of their hidden opportunities. Imagine you stand before the great, blind, and chaotic goddess the old Romans called Fortuna. She is the spinner of the wheel, the arbiter of luck, the source of all the unpredictable, unearned, and undeserved events that make up a human life. One moment, she raises a beggar to a throne. The next, she casts a king into the mud. The man addicted to validation is her perfect slave. His happiness is entirely dependent on which way her wheel is turning. A good day, a compliment, a lucky break. He is exalted. A bad day, a criticism, a sudden misfortune, he is crushed. He lives in a state of perpetual whimpering anxiety, praying to a goddess who is deaf, dumb, and utterly indifferent to his fate. The Machiavellian prince, however, looks upon this wild and terrible goddess not with fear, but with a cold, predatory glint in his eye. He knows the fourth deadly rule for outsmarting the world. Chaos is not a threat, it is a ladder. Machiavelli, in one of the most brilliant chapters of his Prince, dedicates himself to this very problem. How does a man of will and purpose contend with a universe of random chance? He concedes that fortune may control half of our actions, but the other half, he insists, is left to us. He compares fortune to a raging river that floods the plains and destroys everything in its path. The foolish validation-seeking man simply stands there and drowns, lamenting his terrible luck. The wise prince, however, in times of calm, builds dikes and dams. He prepares. And when the flood comes, its destructive energy is channeled, controlled, and even used to irrigate new fields. The prince does not try to stop the river. He harnesses its power for his own ends. Your life is that river. Crises, rejections, ejections, failures, betrayals, these are the inevitable floods. The man addicted to validation sees a breakup or a job loss as a personal tragedy, a judgment from the universe. He broadcasts his sorrow, seeking the warm, useless pity of the crowd. He is the man drowning and screaming for help. The Machiavellian man sees the same crisis as a strategic opportunity. The end of a relationship is not a failure. It is a sudden, liberating clearing of his schedule, a chance to pour all that wasted energy back into his true mission. A job loss is not a rejection. It is an opportunity to escape a stagnant environment and build something of his own. He is the man who sees the flood as a chance to build a new and better city downstream. There is a stark Russian fable about two brothers, Dmitri the Pious and Dmitri the Cunning, whose village was razed by a Tartar horde. After the raiders left, Dmitri the Pious fell to his knees in the ashes and wept, seeing the destruction as God's terrible judgment. He led the survivors in prayer, seeking validation and comfort from the silent heavens. Dmitri the Cunning, however, walked through the ruins with cold, observant eyes. He noted that the fire had destroyed the old, corrupt elder's hall. He noted that it had exposed a hidden, underground spring. He noted which men panicked and which stayed calm. While his brother was praying for a miracle, he was gathering the strong, rationing the remaining food, and making a plan. He used the chaos to shatter the old, stagnant power structure. He built a new village around the new source of water. He did not waste a moment lamenting his fortune. He seized it by the throat. To outsmart a world addicted to validation, you must learn to be Dmitri the Cunning. You must cultivate a secret, thrilling love of chaos. When others are panicking, you must become preternaturally calm. When others are complaining, you must be looking for the hidden spring, the shattered power structure, the unexpected opportunity. You must reframe every disaster as a realignment. This is the true meaning of the Nietzschean concept of amor fati, the love of one's fate. It is not a passive acceptance of suffering. It is an active, joyful, and creative embrace of all that happens, good and bad, as the raw material for your own self-creation. The validation seeker wants the world to be easy, safe, and affirming. The Machiavellian man knows that growth only happens at the point of friction, that strength is only forged in the fire of crisis. He does not pray for the river to be calm. He learns how to build a better ship. The dark, empowering hope here is that you can become immune to the sting of failure. You can alchemize your own pain into power. The events that would crush another man become the very source of your strength and advancement. You are no longer a leaf on the river of fortune. You are the one building the dams. So I ask you this, you who have recently suffered a setback, a rejection, a failure. Stop telling the story of your victimhood. Stop seeking the cheap validation of pity. Look again at the smoking ruins of your situation with the cold, calculating eyes of Dmitri the Cunning. What old rotten structure has been conveniently destroyed? What hidden spring has been revealed? And what new kingdom can you now build upon this beautifully cleared ground? In an age that worships authenticity, the man who masters the art of the virtuous performance is the one they will never see coming. Here is a bitter joke about the human condition, the kind that would make a saint weep and a devil applaud. The world does not want you to be good. It wants you to be seen being good. And the difference between those two things is the entire, bloody, and magnificent art of power. The world addicted to validation is a world of moral children. They crave simple narratives, clear heroes, and unimpeachable villains. They do not have the stomach for ambiguity, for the terrible and necessary compromises that true power requires. They are the audience in a grand, gaudy, and deeply sentimental play, and they will give their undying loyalty not to the best man, but to the best actor. The fifth deadly rule for outsmarting this world is that you must become that actor. You must learn to wear the cloak of the saint, even as your hand rests on the hilt of the assassin's dagger hidden beneath. Machiavelli, in his most scandalous and brilliant chapter, insisted that a prince must be a master of this virtuous deception. He must, above all things, appear to be merciful, faithful, humane, upright, and religious. He must cultivate a public reputation for possessing the very virtues that, in private, he must be willing to abandon in a heartbeat if the security of his state requires it. He understood that men are so desperate to believe in goodness that they will accept a flawless performance of it over the messy, compromised reality of a truly effective leader. You, in your own quiet rise to power, must learn this high and lonely art. The modern world has its own set of fashionable virtues, a new litany for its secular saints: empathy, vulnerability, authenticity, compassion. These are the words they worship. Therefore, these are the words you must learn to speak with more convincing passion than the true believers. You must learn to perform your compassion with the skill of a master thespian. You must curate your moments of vulnerability as carefully as a general plans a feigned retreat, designed to lure your opponents into a sense of false security. There is a dark fairy tale from a land drowning in its own piety. It tells of a kingdom terrorized by a great ancient dragon, a creature of pure, cynical intelligence. Night after night, full of honest courage and brute strength, went to fight it and were devoured. Then came a man who was not a knight. He was a humble monk. He walked to the dragon's lair not with a sword, but with a sacred text and a reputation for profound holiness. The dragon, who had seen 1,000 swords, had never seen such a thing. It was amused by this display of apparent madness. The monk spoke of peace, of forgiveness, of a higher path. He was the perfect image of helpless virtue. The dragon, disarmed by the novelty of the situation, lowered its guard for a single, fatal moment. In that moment, the monk drew from beneath his humble robes a single, needle-thin blade of obsidian, a shard of volcanic glass, and struck the dragon in the one, tiny, soft scale beneath its jaw. He returned to the city not as a cunning killer, but as the saint whose piety had miraculously tamed the beast. His performance of virtue was the only weapon that could have gotten him close enough to strike. The man addicted to validation is desperate to be a good person. The Machiavellian understands it is far more effective to be seen as one. This allows you to move through the world unmolested. Your rivals will underestimate you. Your allies will trust you. The mob will adore you. Your virtuous cloak becomes a cloak of invisibility for your true pragmatic intentions. While everyone else is busy in the noisy, exhausting, and ultimately pointless project of judging each other's authenticity, you are the only one in the room who is quietly getting things done. The strange cold hope in this profound cynicism is a new kind of freedom. It is the liberation from the impossible, exhausting burden of actually having to be a saint. You are a human being, full of contradictions, of darkness and light. To pretend otherwise is a lie. The Machiavellian path allows you to accept your own complex, flawed nature in private, while presenting a simple, admirable face to a world that cannot handle the truth. You are no longer a victim of the mob's moral judgment. You are the director of their moral theater. So, I ask you this, you who work so hard to be a genuinely good man, look at the heroes of our age, the ones drowning in public validation. Are you admiring their actual virtue, or are you simply applauding the most convincing performance? And what could you accomplish? What could you build if you were to stop worrying about the goodness of your own soul and start perfecting the art of the role you were born to play? The ultimate power is not to win their game, but to build a world where their game is no longer played. And so, we have come to the end of the grimoire. You have learned to empty the throne of public opinion, to wield praise as a weapon, to wrap yourself in the cloak of mystery, to ride the wild beast of fortune, and to wear the saint's face over the assassin's heart. You have learned the deadly rules. You now possess the full and terrible toolkit of the prince, the complete curriculum for outsmarting a world that is drowning in its own desperate need for applause. And now, I will tell you the final secret, the one that makes all the others obsolete. The true victory is not to outsmart everyone. It is to build a life so complete, so sovereign, so utterly self-contained, that their validation becomes as irrelevant to you as the whisper of a ghost. All the strategies we have spoken of, the masks, the manipulations, the virtuous deceptions, are the tools of a man at war. They are the necessary, ugly, and effective tactics for a prince who is still fighting for his territory, still consolidating his power in a hostile world. But the purpose of war is, eventually, to achieve a state of peace. A peace so profound and so unshakable that the old weapons can be laid down, not because they are no longer effective, but because there is no one left to fight. The ultimate Machiavellian act is to make yourself obsolete as a player in the game by becoming the game itself. Imagine a man shipwrecked on a deserted island. For the first years, he is obsessed with the outside world. He builds signal fires, he scans the horizon for ships, he screams at the empty ocean. His entire being is oriented toward the validation of rescue. This is the man addicted to validation. Then, he grows wiser. He begins to use the island to his advantage. He learns its secrets. He builds traps. He learns to hunt. He becomes a creature of cunning and strength. This is the Machiavellian strategist. But the final stage is something else entirely. After decades of solitude, the man forgets the outside world altogether. He is no longer trying to be rescued. He has used the island's resources to build a kingdom for one. He has his gardens, his workshop, his library of thoughts. The island is no longer his prison. It is his universe. One day, a ship finally arrives. The sailors are astounded by the world that he has built. They offer him rescue, a return to their world of noise and validation. And the man, for the first time, has the power to look at them with no malice, no resentment, only a profound and quiet peace, and say, "No, thank you. I am already home." That is the final liberation. It is not to outsmart the world. It is to make your own world so magnificent that the old one ceases to be a temptation. This is the transcendence of Machiavelli into the realm of the Stoics and the great mystics. It is the building of the inner citadel, the kingdom of the self, so vast and well fortified that the opinions of others are like the chirping of sparrows outside the walls. Audible, perhaps, but utterly inconsequential. Your work, your purpose, your own inner life becomes the armed prophet we spoke of. A vision so compelling and a reality so strong that it needs no external validation. This is the only true way to outsmart a world addicted to validation. You do not beat the addicts at their own game. You quit the drug. You achieve a state of post-validation, where the entire social currency of likes, of praise, of status, of approval becomes worthless to you. And in a stunning final paradox, this genuine, unforced, and profound indifference to the world's approval is the single most powerful and attractive quality a man can possess. You become the one thing everyone in the world is desperately trying and failing to be: free. So I leave you with this last quiet choice. The tools are yours. You can use them to become a master player in the desperate, exhausting game of human validation, a clever prince in a kingdom of fools. Or you can use them to build the scaffolding for your own private, unconquered island. And then, when it is complete, you can kick the scaffolding away and forget the game ever existed. Will you be the king of their world or the god of your own?